Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the vast crystalline chamber of the Galactic Council, her black diplomatic uniform a stark contrast to the shimmering robes and exotic forms surrounding her. The air hummed with translation fields as dozens of alien species murmured among themselves, their eyes fixed on the lone human representative. The Archon of the Zephyrian Empire rose from his floating throne, his 6 arms spreading wide in what humans had learned was a gesture of dominance. His voice boomed through the chamber's acoustic amplifiers. Human representative, the Archon's words dripped with condescension, your species has grown, troublesome. Your expansion into the outer rim sectors has disrupted the established order. You mine asteroids that have belonged to the collective for millennia. You establish colonies on worlds we have designated as buffer zones. Sarah kept her expression neutral, though her heart pounded. Behind the Archon, holographic displays showed Earth's growing presence in space, orbital habitats, mining operations, research stations, and colonies spreading across dozens of star systems. The Vectar delegate, a massive insectoid creature with razor-sharp mandibles, clicked menacingly. The humans show no respect for boundaries. They ignore our warnings. They refuse to acknowledge the natural hierarchy of the galaxy. Natural hierarchy? Sarah finally spoke, her voice carrying clearly across the chamber. You mean the system where newer spacefaring species are kept as vassals, their resources stripped, their populations controlled? A wave of angry chittering and growling swept through the assembled delegates. The Archon's 4 eyes narrowed to slits. You dare question the order that has maintained peace for 10,000 years, the Archon snarled. Your species achieved faster than light travel a mere 2 centuries ago. You are infants in the cosmic scale. Sarah activated her personal hologram projector. Images of human achievements filled the air, vast space elevators, asteroid cities, fusion plants that powered entire solar systems, generation ships carrying millions to distant worlds. Infants who built all of this without subjugating other species, she replied calmly. Infants who shared our technology freely with the Centauri refugees when the hegemony tried to exterminate them. Infants who have never claimed ownership over star systems based on ancient maps drawn before our sun was born. The chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates shouted in dozens of languages while their translation devices struggled to keep up. The Archon pounded his ceremonial staff against the floor, each impact sending shockwaves through the crystalline structure. Silence, his amplified voice overwhelmed all others. When quiet returned, his tone had turned deadly cold. The Council has reached a decision. Humanity will withdraw from all contested systems. You will cease all expansion beyond your original 27 colonies. You will submit to Council oversight of your military development. And, if we refuse? Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. The Vectar delegate's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his species. Then, you will learn why every species eventually bows to the Council. Your worlds will burn. Your populations will be scattered to the void. Earth itself will become a monument to the price of defiance. Sarah looked around the chamber at faces filled with contempt, superiority, and barely contained hunger for violence. These were predators who had ruled the galaxy through fear for millennia. They saw humanity as upstart prey that needed to be put in its place. I need to consult with my government, she said formally. You have 72 Earth hours, the Archon declared. Submit, or face the consequences. The return journey to Earth felt longer than usual, despite the quantum tunnel network that made interstellar travel nearly instantaneous. Sarah spent the time reviewing the files she'd been carrying in encrypted storage, intelligence reports that painted a disturbing picture of the galaxy's true power structure. The Galactic Council wasn't a peaceful alliance. It was a protection racket on a cosmic scale. Species that joined were stripped of their independence, their best worlds colonized by council members, their populations used as labor forces. Those who refused membership faced intervention, their military infrastructure destroyed, their leaders eliminated, their people scattered as refugees. But humanity had something the Council hadn't encountered before. Earth's military doctrine had evolved from centuries of warfare between roughly equal powers. While Council species had grown soft from millennia of dominance over inferior foes, humans had developed tactics, weapons, and strategies designed to defeat superior enemies. The briefing room in Geneva was packed with representatives from every major Earth government. President Martinez of the Earth Federation sat at the head of the table, her weathered face grim as Sarah finished her report. "So they want us to become another vassal state," General Hassan of the United African Defense Force said bluntly. "Strip away our sovereignty, limit our growth, and bow to their authority. The alternative is war with an alliance that spans half the galaxy," Admiral Petrov of the European Space Navy pointed out. "Their combined fleets outnumber ours 100 to 1. "Numbers aren't everything," General Kim of the Pacific Defense Coalition interjected. "We've seen their military technology. It's advanced but standardized. They've been using the same basic designs for thousands of years because they've never faced serious resistance." Director Okafor of Earth Intelligence spread holographic tactical displays across the table. "Our analysis suggests their military doctrine is based on overwhelming superiority. They deploy massive fleets against primitive enemies and rely on fear to maintain control. They've never fought an enemy that could match their technology or adapt to their tactics." Sarah pulled up recordings of Council fleet movements from the past century. "Look at their formations. They fly in parade formations designed for intimidation, not combat. Their ships are built for projecting power, not surviving battle. Their tactics haven't evolved because they've never needed to." President Martinez leaned back in her chair. "Are you suggesting we could actually win a war against the Council?" "I'm suggesting," General Hassan said slowly, "that we might be the first species they've encountered that's prepared to fight back properly." The debate continued for hours. Some argued for negotiation, others for submission. But, as more intelligence reports were reviewed, a picture emerged of an empire built on bluff and bullying. The Council had grown complacent, their military forces designed more for oppressing conquered populations than fighting determined enemies. Finally, President Martinez called for quiet. "The decision can't be made by committee. But, I won't condemn humanity to slavery without a fight." "General Hassan, how long would you need to mobilize our forces?" "Our rapid response fleets are already deployed," Hassan replied. "Full mobilization would take 72 hours, exactly the deadline the Council gave us." "Then, we use every hour," Martinez decided. "Sarah, send a message to the Council. Tell them we need the full deadline to consider their demands. Meanwhile, we prepare for the possibility that diplomacy might fail." Across human space, the machinery of war began to turn. Orbital shipyards that had been producing cargo vessels and colony ships retooled for military production. Mining platforms started extracting materials for weapons and armor. Research stations shifted focus to tactical applications of their technologies. On Earth's moon, ancient missile silos built during the early space age were reactivated and loaded with modern kinetic penetrators. Mars Command began coordinating with the asteroid belt colonies to establish supply lines and fallback positions. The generation ships carrying colonists to distant systems received orders to alter course for strategic locations. In the depths of Earth's oceans, submarine factories that had produced peaceful exploration vessels began building hunter-killers designed for space combat. The orbital habitats around Jupiter transformed into fortress stations bristling with defensive systems. But, the most important preparations were taking place in classified facilities scattered across human space. Research teams worked frantically to weaponize technologies the Council had never encountered: quantum communication networks that couldn't be jammed, stealth systems based on gravitational manipulation, weapons that could strike targets across interstellar distances. Sarah spent her remaining time on Earth visiting the families of military personnel who would soon deploy to the galaxy's edge. In small towns and vast cities, she saw the same determination in human faces: a refusal to bow to threats, a willingness to fight for freedom even against impossible odds. The message from the Council arrived exactly 72 hours after the ultimatum was delivered. Sarah opened it in the Federation Assembly Hall, surrounded by representatives from every human world and habitat. "This is the Council's final offer," the Archon's translated voice filled the chamber. "Submit to our authority, withdraw to your designated territories, and accept our oversight. Refuse, and we will demonstrate why the galaxy has learned to fear us." "You have 6 hours to respond." President Martinez stood before the assembled representatives. "The choice is before us. Slavery or war.
submission or defiance? What does humanity choose? The vote was unanimous.
Every single representative, from Earth's massive population centers to the smallest asteroid mining stations, voted the same way. Sarah composed the response herself, keeping it simple and direct. The United Governments of Humanity reject the Council's ultimatum.
We will not submit to tyranny. We will not abandon our colonies. We will not bow to threats. If you want our freedom, you'll have to take it from us.
As the message transmitted across the quantum communication network toward Council space, Sarah looked out at the stars visible through the assembly hall's transparent dome. Somewhere out there, fleets were moving. The galaxy's ancient order was about to face its first real challenge in 10,000 years.
The war was coming. And humanity was ready.
The first Council fleet arrived at Proxima Station exactly 48 hours after humanity's rejection was received. Captain Elena Vasquez watched from the command bridge of the battleship Defiance as enemy ships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect parade formation.
"Count them," she ordered her tactical officer. 200 ships, Captain. Dreadnoughts, battlecruisers, and support vessels.
They're maintaining formation at 15 million kilometers and broadcasting on all frequencies. The transmission appeared on the main screen, the Archon's familiar six-armed figure, now dressed in ceremonial war regalia that probably cost more than Proxima Station's entire annual budget. "Humans of the rebellious colonies," his voice boomed with artificial authority, "witness the power you have chosen to defy.
This fleet represents merely 1% of the Council's military might. Surrender now, and your deaths will be swift."
Captain Vasquez smiled grimly. The Council was following their standard playbook: overwhelming display of force, demands for surrender, then, the systematic destruction of military assets while civilian populations watched in terror. But humanity had spent 72 hours preparing surprises. "Tactical, are our friends in position?" she asked. "All stealth ships report ready, Captain."
"Mining platforms have armed their kinetic launchers. Long-range platforms are charging their main batteries." The Council fleet began its advance in the same arrogant formation they'd used for millennia. Ship-to-ship communications chattered with confident predictions about how quickly the human forces would break and run. They never saw the attack coming. The asteroid belt around Proxima had been humanity's first major mining operation outside the Sol system. What the Council didn't know was that every mining platform had been equipped with electromagnetic launchers capable of accelerating or containers to significant fractions of lightspeed. When the shooting started, those same launchers began firing solid tungsten penetrators. The Council's shields were designed to stop energy weapons and explosive warheads. They weren't prepared for kinetic projectiles moving at 8% lightspeed. The first volley punched through 6 dreadnoughts before the Council even realized they were under attack. Unknown weapon signatures, came the panic transmissions from the Council fleet. "Multiple impacts. We're taking heavy casualties." Captain Vasquez watched the enemy formation dissolve into chaos as more kinetic rounds found their targets. "Launch the Hornets," she ordered. From hidden positions throughout the asteroid belt, swarms of small attack craft emerged. These weren't traditional fighters, they were automated drones designed for one purpose: carrying fusion warheads into close range with enemy capital ships. The Council fleet's point defense systems opened fire, filling space with energy beams and explosive rounds. Many drones were destroyed, but they kept coming in waves. The survivors slammed into Council ships and detonated, tearing massive holes in hulls designed more for intimidation than battle damage. "This is Admiral Korth of the Council fleet," came another transmission, this one much less confident. "You fight without honor." These cowards' weapons. His transmission cut off as 3 kinetic rounds struck his flagship simultaneously. The massive vessel, pride of the Zephyrian fleet, cracked in half and began venting atmosphere. But the Council wasn't defenseless. Their return fire began finding targets as they adapted to humanity's tactics. Proxima Station's outer ring exploded in a ball of plasma as a Council dreadnought's main battery scored a direct hit. Human fighters engaged the enemy at close range, trading their lives to protect the civilian evacuation ships fleeing toward the inner system. Captain Vasquez knew this was only the opening move. Proxima was a fortress designed to be sacrificed if necessary. The real battle would come when the Council reached Earth. The news of Proxima's fall reached Earth within hours, transmitted through quantum communication networks the Council couldn't intercept. The reports were sobering. The Council fleet had been badly damaged, losing over 60 ships, but they'd broken through the defenses and were advancing on the Sol system. In the command center deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Hassan watched tactical displays showing fleet movements across human space. The picture wasn't encouraging. Council forces were attacking 12 different systems simultaneously, probing for weaknesses in humanity's defenses. "Status report," he ordered. "New Johannesburg is under siege," Admiral Chen reported. "The colonial fleet is holding them off, but they're outnumbered 5-1. Kepler 442 has gone dark. We think the Council cracked their communication array. And the main assault fleet is 2 days out from Earth. What about our counter-offensive?" Admiral Petrov smiled grimly. "Strike Force Alpha is in position. We should receive confirmation of their attack within the hour." 800 light-years from Earth, the Council's regional command center on Hegemony Prime was experiencing what their computers classified as impossible events. Admiral Jackson watched from the bridge of the stealth carrier Invisible Hand as human strike teams materialized throughout the fortified system. The Council had never developed stealth technology because they'd never needed it. Their enemies were always primitive species they could intimidate into submission. "Ghost Squadron, you're clear for your run on the orbital platforms," Jackson transmitted. "Phantom Wing, take out their communication arrays. All units, remember, we're not here to hold ground. Hit hard, cause chaos, and get out." The human strike force had traveled through hyperspace using stolen Council navigation codes provided by sympathetic species the Council had oppressed for centuries. The attack was perfectly coordinated, hitting 17 key Council installations simultaneously across 4 star systems. On Hegemony Prime, plasma charges detonated in the main shipyard, destroying 3 dreadnoughts under construction. The Council's primary communication hub exploded as human commandos overloaded its power core. Most importantly, the Strategic Reserve Fleet found itself under attack by cloaked ships that appeared out of nowhere, struck like lightning, and vanished before the defense platforms could respond. Similar attacks erupted across Council space. Supply convoys vanished without trace. Strategic installations suffered mysterious explosions. Command centers received conflicting orders as human cyber warfare specialists infiltrated their networks. The Council had ruled through centralized authority for so long that they struggled to adapt when that authority was disrupted. Local commanders hesitated to act without orders from headquarters. Fleet movements slowed as admirals waited for confirmation that never came. But the most devastating blow was psychological. For 10,000 years, the Council had been untouchable in their core territories. The idea that primitive humans could strike at the heart of their empire shattered the myth of Council invincibility. Back in Sol System, the main Council assault fleet dropped out of hyperspace exactly when Earth's computers predicted they would. 500 ships materialized in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with ceremonial paint and precious metals. President Martinez watched from the command center as the enemy fleet took position just outside the asteroid belt. The Council commander, a massive Vector general whose chittering translated as Supreme Hive Leader Zekthran, appeared on the main screen. "Humans of the homeworld," his mechanical translation device rendered his clicks and buzzes into words, "you have caused great inconvenience to the Council. Your terrorist attacks on our installations will be punished. But we are merciful. Surrender now, and only 90% of your population will be harvested as examples." Martinez felt her jaw clench. Harvested. Like they were talking about crops instead of human beings. "General Hassan," she said quietly, "are we ready?" "All platforms report ready. The Sol defense grid is fully charged. Fleet elements are in position. Then, let's show them what happens when you threaten Earth." The Council fleet began its advance, moving in the same stately formation that had intimidated countless worlds. Their ships were massive, built to inspire fear as much as fight battles. Many carried ceremonial decorations that added nothing to their combat capability but everything to their psychological impact. They were halfway to Mars orbit when Earth's defenses revealed themselves. The Sol defense grid had been humanity's greatest engineering achievement, a network of orbital platforms, asteroid fortresses, and mobile weapons stationed throughout the solar system.
What made it unique wasn't just its size, but its design philosophy. While the Council built individual superweapons designed to overwhelm enemies through brute force, humans had created an integrated system where each component supported the others.
Sensor platforms shared targeting data instantly. Weapons platforms could focus their fire on single targets or spread it across multiple threats.
Command and control was distributed across hundreds of nodes, making the system nearly impossible to decapitate. When the shooting started, the Council fleet found itself facing coordinated fire from dozens of directions simultaneously.
Railguns on series launched projectiles that would arrive at precise coordinates minutes later.
Orbital platforms around Jupiter fired particle beams that crossed space at lightspeed. Hidden weapons buried in the asteroid belt revealed themselves and added their firepower to the devastating barrage. The Council's response was immediate and overwhelming. Their energy weapons turned space into a light show visible from Earth's surface. Several human platforms disappeared in balls of plasma as Council dreadnoughts concentrated their fire. But, for every human position destroyed, the Council lost 2 or 3 ships to the precisely coordinated return fire.
Supreme Hive Leader Zekthran realized his force was being systematically destroyed by an enemy he couldn't properly target.
All ships, break formation. Advance at maximum speed. Close to combat range. It was exactly what the humans had hoped he would do. As the Council fleet charged toward the inner system, they passed through a seemingly empty region of space between Mars and Earth. Unknown to the Council, this region contained the largest minefield in human military history, millions of kinetic mines programmed to activate when large masses moved through their sensor range. The result was carnage. Council ships designed for fleet actions found themselves swarmed by small, fast-moving projectiles they couldn't effectively target. Point defense systems designed to stop missiles and fighters were overwhelmed by the sheer number of attacks. But the Council forces were tough and determined. Despite taking massive casualties, over 200 ships broke through the minefield and continued their advance toward Earth. Their formation was broken, their crews shaken, but they still outnumbered the human fleet defending Earth orbit. The final battle began as the Council remnants engaged the Earth defense fleet in the shadow of humanity's homeworld. Ancient orbital habitats that had housed millions of civilians transformed into fortress stations. The Moon's surface erupted with missile launches as hidden installations revealed themselves. But the turning point came when Admiral Sarah Chen, now commanding the battleship Unconquerable, transmitted a message on all frequencies, not just to human forces, but to every ship in the system. Council forces, her voice carried across space, reaching both human and alien ears, you came here expecting to find victims. Instead, you found warriors. You thought your size and numbers would intimidate us into submission. You were wrong. This is what happens when you threaten humanity's children. As if summoned by her words, the space around Earth suddenly filled with new contacts. The reserve fleet emerged from hiding places throughout the outer system, ships that had been masquerading as cargo haulers, mining vessels, and research platforms. Hidden weapon systems activated on civilian habitats and industrial platforms. The Council had planned for a military engagement. They hadn't planned for an entire civilization mobilized for war. Supreme Hive Leader Zekthran watched his fleet dissolve around him as humanity revealed the true scope of their preparations. Every human in the system had become part of the defense. Every orbital platform, every asteroid mining station, every research outpost had been weaponized. This is impossible, he chittered to his tactical officer. Intelligence said they were a peaceful species. Where did all these weapons come from? His tactical officer's mandibles clicked nervously. Sir, I think we may have misunderstood their nature. They're not peaceful. They're just selective about when they fight. The battle for Earth lasted 18 hours. When it ended, the Council's invincible assault fleet had been reduced to less than 50 ships limping back toward the edge of the system. Behind them, Earth's orbital space was filled with debris from both sides, but the blue marble of humanity's homeworld still turned peacefully in its ancient orbit. The message Earth sent to the Council was simple: Earth remains free. Your move. 6 months after the Battle of Earth, the galaxy had changed in ways no one could have predicted. The Council's absolute authority had cracked, and, through those cracks, rebellion was spreading like wildfire.
Ambassador Sarah Chen, now serving as humanity's first galactic war coordinator, stood on the observation deck of Harmony Station, humanity's new forward command base in neutral space. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see ships from dozens of species, former Council vassals who had declared independence after witnessing Earth's victory. The Centauri Republic has joined the Free Worlds Alliance, reported Captain Torres, now serving as her aide. That brings our total membership to 47 systems and counting. Sarah nodded, but her expression remained serious. And the Council's response? Predictable. They're mobilizing everything they have. Our intelligence estimates suggest they're gathering the largest fleet in galactic history, over 10,000 ships. The door chimed, and Admiral Hassan entered the observation lounge. His weathered face carried the weight of 6 months of constant warfare, but his eyes still held the determined gleam that had carried humanity through its darkest hours. "Sarah, we need to talk," he said without preamble. "I just received word from our deep reconnaissance teams. The Council isn't just mobilizing their fleet. They're implementing something called the Final Solution Protocol." Sarah felt her blood chill. "What does that mean?" Hassan activated a holographic display showing intelligence reports gathered by human agents throughout Council space. "It means they've decided that containment isn't enough. They're planning to exterminate every rebel species entirely. Starting with Earth." The images showed massive construction projects in the Council's core systems, ships larger than anything previously built, weapons platforms that dwarfed entire space stations, and, most disturbing of all, manufacturing facilities producing something the translations labeled as planetary sterilization devices. "They're building world killers," Hassan continued grimly. "Not just weapons to destroy military targets or infrastructure. Weapons designed to strip the atmosphere from inhabited planets and render them permanently uninhabitable." Sarah stared at the intelligence reports, feeling the weight of billions of lives on her shoulders. "How long do we have?" "Our best estimate? 4 months until their fleet is ready to move. 6 months until they reach Earth." The next few weeks were a blur of desperate activity. Sarah found herself traveling to dozens of worlds, meeting with leaders of species that had lived under Council domination for millennia. Many were eager to fight, but few had the military capability to stand against the Council's full might. On New Terra, she addressed the Refugee Council, representatives of species the Council had scattered or enslaved over the centuries. The chamber was filled with beings she was still learning to distinguish: the crystalline luminari who communicated through controlled light emission, the aquatic depth seekers whose environmental suits bubbled constantly, the nomadic fleet wanderers who had lived in space for so long they could barely survive on planetary surfaces. "The Council believes they can end this rebellion by destroying Earth," Sarah told the assembled delegates. "They think that without humanity's example, the rest of you will surrender and return to servitude." A luminary delegate pulsed with angry red light. "And, will you? Will humanity flee to preserve themselves?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Sarah had heard variations of it dozens of times, the assumption that when faced with total destruction, humans would abandon their allies and save themselves. "Let me tell you about humanity," Sarah said quietly. 6 months ago, we were given a choice between slavery and war. We chose war. Today, we're given a choice between survival and standing with our friends. We choose our friends." The chamber erupted in what passed for cheers among the various species present. But Sarah knew words weren't enough. They needed a plan. The plan that emerged from weeks of desperate strategizing was audacious even by human standards. Instead of waiting for the Council's massive fleet to attack Earth, the Free Worlds Alliance would strike first, not at the fleet itself, which was too powerful to defeat directly, but at the infrastructure supporting it. The Council's strength came from their ability to coordinate resources across thousands of worlds. Their ships needed fuel, ammunition, spare parts, and crew rotations. Their command structure depended on communication networks spanning the galaxy. If those systems could be disrupted. Admiral Hassan called it Operation Prometheus, stealing fire from the gods. The operation began simultaneously across 40 different star systems. Human stealth ships, carrying mixed crews of former Council vassals, materialized in heavily defended systems that hadn't seen combat in millennia.
Their targets weren't military installations, but the mundane infrastructure the Council took for granted. In the Hegemony Core system, a team of human commandos and Centauri hackers infiltrated the main communication hub that coordinated fleet movements across half the galaxy. Instead of destroying it, they introduced subtle errors into the routing protocols, messages that would arrive hours late, orders that would reach the wrong recipients, confirmations that would never be sent. In the Vector Home system, Luminari engineers used their unique understanding of crystalline technology to introduce resonance frequencies into the Council's quantum communication networks. The networks would continue to function normally for weeks, then fail catastrophically at the worst possible moment. On dozens of industrial worlds, cargo haulers operated by Fleet Wanderer crews made their regular deliveries to Council shipyards and military depots. Hidden among the routine supplies were time-delayed charges and computer viruses that would activate when the Council fleet began its advance. But the most ambitious part of Operation Prometheus was taking place at the edge of Council space, where humanity's newest and most dangerous ships were approaching the Nexus. The Nexus was the Council's ultimate symbol of power, a massive space station built around an artificial black hole, serving as both the seat of government and the primary hub for the hyperspace network that connected the galaxy. It was defended by the most powerful fleet in the Council's arsenal and protected by shields that could deflect the firepower of entire armadas. It had never been successfully attacked in 10,000 years of Council rule. Captain Elena Vasquez, now commanding the experimental ship Prometheus itself, watched the massive station grow larger on her viewscreen. Her ship was unlike anything humanity had built before, a fusion of human engineering and technologies provided by rebel species. Centauri quantum drives allowed it to slip between dimensions. Luminari crystalline computers processed information at impossible speeds. Fleet Wanderer survival systems kept the crew alive in environments that would kill ordinary humans. Stealth systems holding steady, reported her tactical officer, a former Council slave who had joined the human fleet after his homeworld declared independence. "They haven't detected us. Take us closer," Vasquez ordered. "We need to get within the shield perimeter before we reveal ourselves." The plan was simple in concept, impossible in execution. The Prometheus would penetrate the Nexus defenses using stealth technology the Council had never encountered. Once inside the shield perimeter, it would deploy a specially modified quantum torpedo, not to destroy the station, which was impossible, but to disrupt the artificial black hole at its core. The black hole served multiple purposes. It generated the massive energy requirements for the station's systems. It anchored the hyperspace nodes that allowed instant travel across the galaxy. Most importantly, it created the gravitational effects that held the entire structure together. If the black hole could be destabilized, even briefly, the resulting chaos would cripple the Council's ability to coordinate their forces. Fleet deployments would be delayed. Communication networks would fail. The carefully planned assault on Earth would dissolve into confusion and disorder. "We're through the outer perimeter," the helmsman reported. Approaching the station's docking ring. The Nexus was even more massive up close, a structure that housed billions of beings and contained enough firepower to destroy entire solar systems. Patrol ships moved through the space around it like insects around a hive, their movements following patterns established over millennia. "Deploy the torpedo," Vasquez ordered. The weapon that launched from the Prometheus looked like an ordinary ship's missile, but its warhead contained technology that pushed the boundaries of known physics. Human theoretical physicists had spent months calculating the precise resonance frequency needed to destabilize an artificial black hole. Centauri quantum engineers had built the delivery system. The torpedo itself had been constructed by former Council scientists who knew the Nexus's design better than anyone. The torpedo penetrated the station's defenses using the same stealth technology that had gotten the Prometheus this far. It passed through energy shields designed to stop conventional weapons, slipped between patrol routes programmed to detect normal threats, and came to rest against the containment field surrounding the artificial black hole. Then, it detonated. The explosion wasn't visible in the conventional sense, there was no flash of light, no expanding fireball. Instead, space itself seemed to ripple around the Nexus as fundamental forces that had been held in perfect balance for millennia suddenly shifted out of alignment. The artificial black hole flickered like a candle in the wind. Across the galaxy, the effects were immediate and devastating. Hyperspace nodes that had operated flawlessly for thousands of years suddenly destabilized.
Ships traveling through the network found themselves dropped into normal space light years from their intended destinations. Communication networks that depended on quantum entanglement through the Nexus went silent.
The Council's carefully coordinated assault on Earth dissolved into chaos as fleet commanders lost contact with their orders, supply lines, and each other. On the Council chamber where this had all begun, the Archon stared at status displays showing the breakdown of everything he had taken for granted.
Ships scattered throughout the galaxy, unable to coordinate their movements.
Industrial worlds cut off from the command structure that had governed them for millennia.
Military units waiting for orders that would never come.
How is this possible? He demanded of his advisors.
The humans had no ships capable of reaching the Nexus.
His intelligence chief, a nervous Vectar whose mandibles clicked constantly with anxiety, consulted his reports. Sir, it appears they had help.
The attack force included vessels from multiple rebel species.
They shared their technologies.
Impossible, the Archon snarled. Those species hate each other. They've been enemies for centuries.
Apparently, the intelligence chief said quietly, they hate us more. The Battle of the Nexus, as historians would later call it, marked the beginning of the end for the Council's galactic dominance. With their command structure crippled and their forces scattered, they were unable to respond effectively to the wave of uprisings that swept across their territory. On Earth, Sarah Chen received the reports from across human space with a mixture of relief and sadness. The immediate threat to Earth had been neutralized, but she knew the galaxy would never be the same. 10,000 years of stability had ended, and what came next was anyone's guess. General Hassan joined her on the observation deck of Geneva Command, looking out at the stars that suddenly seemed much closer than they had 6 months ago. Status report, she requested. The Centauri Republic has liberated their entire home sector, Hassan reported.
The Luminare Collective is expanding into former Council space. 36 minor species have declared independence, and more are joining every day.
And the Council?
Fragmenting.
Some core systems are trying to maintain the old order. Others are seeking accommodation with the rebels.
A few are even requesting to join the Free Worlds Alliance. Sarah smiled slightly.
Amazing what happens when the bullies lose their ability to coordinate. There will be challenges ahead, Hassan warned. Some of these species have legitimate grievances against each other.
Without the Council holding them down, old conflicts might resurface.
Then, we'll help them find better ways to resolve those conflicts, Sarah said firmly. The galaxy doesn't need another empire built on fear and oppression. It needs a genuine alliance of free worlds.
As if summoned by her words, a communication alert chimed.
The main screen activated, showing a face Sarah had never expected to see again, the Archon of the former Zephyrian Empire, but now wearing simple robes instead of ceremonial regalia. Ambassador Chen, he said, his pride clearly struggling with necessity, the remaining Council systems would like to request a ceasefire. And, perhaps, discuss terms for joining your alliance. Sarah looked at the being who had threatened to enslave humanity just months before. His empire was broken, his fleet scattered, his authority shattered. In the old galaxy, this would have been the moment for revenge, for turning the tables and making the former oppressors into the new slaves. But humanity had not fought this war for conquest or revenge. The Free Worlds Alliance welcomes all who come in peace, Sarah replied diplomatically. But, understand, we're not offering you a chance to rebuild your empire under a new name.
We're offering you a chance to become equal members of a truly free galaxy.
The Archon's 4 eyes showed complex emotions, relief, humiliation, and, perhaps something that might have been hope.
What would membership require, he asked. The same thing we require from everyone, Sarah said. Respect for the sovereignty of other worlds. Genuine representation for all your citizens.
And a commitment to solving conflicts through cooperation rather than conquest.
And if we accept these terms?
Sarah smiled, and, for the first time in months, it reached her eyes. Then, we start building something the galaxy has never seen before, a civilization based on freedom instead of fear. Behind her, Earth continued its ancient rotation, blue and green and peaceful in the starlight. Across the galaxy, Billions of beings were experiencing something they had never known before, the possibility of determining their own destinies. The Council had tried to intimidate Earth. Instead, they had awakened something that would reshape the galaxy forever. Not another empire, but an alliance of free worlds united by the simple belief that the future belonged to those brave enough to choose it for themselves.
The Age of Empires was ending. The Age of Freedom had begun.